What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Facade. I am your host, Gavin J. Gallagher, and on this podcast, I explore the mental and emotional game often playing out subconsciously, both in your mind and the mind of everyone else in the real estate or property investment market. The key to success in this game is to master your mindset and behavior, to take control of your thoughts, your emotions, and most importantly, your ego. Welcome to the show. Guys, real quick before we begin, just want to ask you a quick favor. If you can, please stop what you're doing and leave a review for the podcast. Whatever platform you're listening in on, if you can give us a 5-star or whatever the highest rating is, it would be fantastic. And even better, if you found it useful in any way, please write that down on a very brief review if that's possible. It makes such a difference to how the podcast is received out there and pushed out on various platforms. That's all, nothing else to ask. Now let's get on with the show. All right, guys, welcome back and welcome to episode number 150. This is a big milestone, and so I want to talk about something a little bit different this week. Well, maybe a little bit more than a little different. It's going to be quite a step aside from the usual real estate content. And so I'd like you to stay listening, though, because I think it could be helpful. What I want to talk about this week are the various systems. I'm going to be diving into some of the systems that I work with and that I have kind of developed over the last couple of years that help me optimize my productivity, maximize my discipline, and overall kind of create a general health and well-being that sort of stands to me. And I don't know whether this is going to be of interest to you. Obviously, you guys can switch off if this doesn't sound of interest. But the reason I want to talk about this is because, like, what is it all about? Why do you come here to listen to this show? I presume it is to learn about property investment and real estate sector. And what is the purpose of that? Well, you want to learn how to become a better investor, and you want to learn how to create wealth, and you want to learn how to, let's say, live life on your own terms. Nobody wants to die the richest person in the graveyard. And so the idea, as far as I'm concerned, is I want to create freedom. It's not just to create money, it's to create freedom. And I'm not talking about simply financial freedom. I'm talking about freedom of time, and I'm talking about freedom of purpose. Like, what I want to be able to do, I want to be able to afford to do the things that I want, both financially and in terms of available time. And I also want to be able to go after the stuff that really matters to me and that it holds a particularly strong or deep meaning for me. That is what freedom means for me. And that is why I went after the real estate. It's not to accumulate money per se. It's obviously necessary to have money, but money is not the answer, because who wants to die the richest person in the graveyard? Certainly I do not. Now, so it is quite a departure from the usual topic, but I think it could be useful. And, let me know anyway what you think, whether or not this is a topic that you think I should steer away from next time, or whether it's something that you're interested in learning more about or hearing more along this line. So let's get into the show. Now, before I do, I want to give you guys a very quick, a very brief update. As you were listening, if you were listening last week, you will know that I was away in Tenerife, and I went away for a short break with my family, and it was absolutely fab. The winter here in Dublin has been pretty harsh, bad weather, a lot of rain, and then we had sort of the snow. Thankfully, I missed that. I was away. I was sitting by the pool with my kids in 27, 28 degrees. It was just absolutely fantastic. And some of the things I was reflecting when I was away, I was reflecting on a lot of this kind of stuff, and I was thinking, you know what? Normally I can be a bit kind of hard going on myself, and I can say, got to push, drive myself. But having enjoyed that week off, I feel so recharged and so full of energy that I'm going to now schedule, and I'm going to make non-negotiable. And that's a word you're going to hear maybe a little bit more in this episode, but I am going to start making, getting breaks away every 2 to 3 months, absolutely non-negotiable. And I'm going to schedule it in, because the benefits are so huge. When you come back, you've got all this additional credit, creativity. you've got extra energy, vitality, all that kind of stuff. And I think it was Stephen Covey, the author, and he wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of those habits was sharpen the saw. And that is, it's based on that old fable of the 2 guys cutting down a tree. And one of them is a big burly guy who's like just using all his effort. And the other guy is a small guy, and he spends half the time sharpening the blade on his saw. And then when he goes at it, he beats the guy that was the big burly guy that just kind of got to it. And so schedule breaks, make sure that you build that into your your plan for the year, because to me, it just changed my whole outlook, and it's made me far more productive. And that's what we're talking about today. Now, before I go any further, I want to give a quick shout out. I was shopping today with my wife and family. We were looking for furniture for the new house, and a chap came up to me and introduced himself as a listener of the podcast, Chris Birmingham. Chris and his wife, Kelly, they came over and said a few nice words about the podcast and stuff like that, and just really, really grateful for you coming over, Chris. So wanted to give you a very quick shout out, and thanks for doing that. So the next thing I want to say is, those of you who have been listening for a long time will have, back in episode 109, which hard to believe is like nearly a year ago now, I interviewed a chap called Mark Bryant. And Mark, the episode was called From Terminal to Triathlon. And Mark went through his kind of epic battle with cancer, and he had a very, very bad diagnosis. He was actually so bad, the diagnosis was so bad that the life insurance company gave him his life insurance payment. They actually paid out because it was so unlikely that he was going to survive. And he used that to actually work on getting healthy and getting better and stuff like that. Anyway, he did a big Ironman. He did the Cork Ironman here in Ireland. Big, long triathlon. Took like 13 hours or whatever. And a couple of weeks after that, he went in for his usual cancer test, and he got a pretty bad diagnosis, like a checkup. Normally it's like, yes, all clear. It was not all clear. And he started to wonder if maybe the triathlon event had been the reason that he went and took a step backwards. So anyway, it's been a pretty scary time from the last couple of months. He's been trying to kind of get himself back into the all clear. And I heard today that he has got himself back in the all clear. So what a roller coaster ride, the poor guy. Your health, guys, your health is your wealth. Don't forget that. And it's something that I'm going to be talking about today. That's it for the updates. Now let's get into the main topic. So the systems that I use to maximize or to optimize my productivity, my discipline, and my wellness. And I'm going to start again with the saying that your health is your wealth. And by that, I mean, like, I cannot emphasize it enough. If you want to be more successful, if you want to be more productive, all of that comes from your health. The starting place is having a strong body and a strong mind. If you don't have that, then you're always going to be suboptimal. And suboptimal means that you're not delivering. Now, why am I so kind of fixated on this? Well, because first of all, I watched my own dad die at the age of 45. Health was not a priority for him. He had made bad choices over his lifetime. His lifestyle was not particularly healthy. And so at the age of 45, I was there with him when he checked out at Vincent's Hospital. Very, very sad. And so today I would consider myself pretty obsessed with my health and fitness. And it's because, for many reasons, but one of them is I have 5 kids, and I know what it's like to lose a parent, and I would hate for that to happen to my kids. So, but it's not just that, okay? It's fitness impacts everything, okay? So from a business perspective, if you're fit, you're sharper mentally. So you're making better decisions. You're also able to cope with stress better, and I find you're more creative. And so all of that obviously helps, especially from in terms of marketing your business or whatever it is, coming up with creative ideas for this podcast, whatever it might be. It all helps. I usually pick up those ideas on a run or on a long walk. I did a 10-kilometer walk yesterday, and it took me about an hour and 45 minutes. I walked the entire distance, but just during that, listening to a podcast and at the same time, thinking about my own stuff. The next thing is family. Obviously, I have a young family. My youngest is 2 years of age, Dominic, and when he turns 21, I'm going to be turning 70. And I do not like how that sounds, okay? And for those of you, those young people listening in, this might not seem very sort of obvious, but I remember when my dad died at 45, I was 21, and I can remember thinking, well, dad is old at 45. That was my view, that dad is old, so it wasn't unusual that he was dead at 45. Now that I'm 50, I'm thinking, where did that go? That time just went by so quickly. And that is one of the things that I want to tell you all, is that, if you're 25 today, you will be 50 in a very short space of time. It doesn't seem like it on a day-to-day basis, but when you look back, it's like a blink of an eye. And it's very, very hard to kind of come to terms with that. I have an 18-year-old daughter. I can remember the day she was born like it was yesterday. And so what is the point? My 2-year-old is, he's going to want to do football. He's going to do all of these things. And I don't want to be that 70-year-old dad who is kind of like going around on a walking stick or something like that. I want to be participating in, those football games that we play. I want to be participating. Maybe he wants to do triathlon. I'd like to be able to do that with him. And so now, admittedly, I probably take my health a lot more serious than the average person. But then again, I do have this different perspective given my dad died so young. One of the other reasons to be fit is because I want to live a long and fulfilling life. And I want to make an impact in the world. And in order for me to do that, you don't make an impact in a short space of time. This is the 150th episode. So I'm at this, this is my 4th year at it. But if you think about it from the point of view of just impact, I haven't even scratched the surface yet. Maybe if you're listening for a while, I've had an impact on you. But for me to have the greatest impact, I need to stack the odds in my favor. And by that, I mean, I want to be around for as long as possible, functioning, at the age that I am now. I want to continue functioning at this same kind of performance level 20 years from now. I don't want to be the guy that, I need to retire, I feel awful. As of 2022, the average lifespan of an Irish male is 82.6 years. And so that would mean that if I live to the average lifespan, I have about 32 years to go. Now, that does not sound particularly great to me, considering I can remember, my dad died almost 30 years ago now. And so, that is like yesterday in terms of my memory. And so the thought that 30 years from now, I could be on my deathbed, that scares the living Jesus out of me. And so what I want to do is stack the odds in my favor that I will live considerably longer than that. And it might sound crazy when I say, but I want to be in my hundreds, and I want to be healthy in my hundreds. Now, that's going to sound crazy, irrational and all that. But if you consider back in 1972, when I was born, the average age of an Irish male was 70 years of age. And in 1962, it was 68. And in 1952, it was 64. So every every decade or so, they're adding years. And so 30 years from now, maybe 95 will be the average age. Who knows? But I certainly want to be, as fit as possible. For that duration. I don't want to be the guy that's kind of falling behind. Now, that's not supposed to be turning into a fitness podcast, but what I want to get, my point is that if you want to be around into your, getting older and stuff like that, you don't want to be one of these people that is, in a wheelchair or, because of old age and because your joints have failed or whatever, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And that's kind of, I think it was Jocko Willink say it, use it or lose it. And so you got to stay fit. You got to watch your weight. You've got to watch what you eat. What you consume is obviously very, very important. And not just in terms of food you put in your mouth, but what you put into your brain in terms of the content you're watching. and you're consuming online. Your mental cognition is important, okay? I don't want to be around and like for the fairies, with dementia or something like that. So stack the odds in my favor. And this is all part of the optimizing my productivity. By doing all of these things, it helps me to stay maximally productive. And the main point is that at the end of the day, let's say you hit it big and you follow some of the suggestions and the strategies that I've suggested on this podcast, and you make it big and you've got millions. Like, who wants to have all these millions and then you're not able to enjoy it because you have poor health when you're older? That would be pretty bad. And so the idea for me is to have it all, to have the success, but also the health to enjoy that success, rather than being the guy who's highly successful but has the worst health and is in hospital all the time. Now, on the topic of longevity and talking about living into your hundreds and stuff, if you think that sounds crazy, some of you who are following the internet might be aware of a guy called Brian Johnson. Now, Brian is a tech entrepreneur based in the US. And he's been very successful already. He's 47 now, but like 10 years ago, he sold his company for $800 million. So he's an incredibly wealthy man. And he's actually, if you're interested, he has done, a couple of years ago, he did an interview with Tim Ferriss. And he's kind of a techie, nerdy kind of a guy, but interesting. One of the reasons why he has come back into my kind of radar lately is that he has started a thing called Blueprint. And what it is it's its own personal longevity project is the best way of describing it. And what he's doing is he's using all of his resources, his very substantial resources, and he's spending about $160,000 a month on reversing his aging. And it's actually working, which is fascinating to think. He is now 47, but he has managed in the last 7 or 8 months, he has managed to turn his biological age to 42. So he's shaved, in the space of 7 years, he's eliminated 5 years of his aging. And so chronologically 47, but biologically all of the medical tests point to him only being 42. Now, obviously, 200 medical tests a year, like blood draws all the time. He's constantly being tested. And, that's his kind of thing. I did say he's a techie kind of nerdy guy. And it's not for me. Obviously, I don't want to live like that, like a human guinea pig. But what's really interesting to me is what they call, escape velocity in aging. And so to be able to, as we get older and as technology changes, and improves medical treatment and all that kind of stuff, we're reaching what's known as escape velocity when it comes to aging. And there is a point in the future when medical science will be able to postpone death for indefinitely. As long as you don't walk out in front of a bus or something like that, you should be able to live decades longer than normal. And this is what they're all kind of working towards. And there is some incredible technology and some medical advances going on out there. And I follow this kind of stuff, so that's why I'm aware of it. Now, as I mentioned, this is not really supposed to be turning into a health podcast. Really, the point that I'm making is that if you want to be super productive and if you want to use that productivity to get successful, then your mind and your body is the first place to start. If you don't have that under control, then you're suboptimal. Now, to get into my personal morning routine, I know I mentioned quite a few episodes back that I might do an episode on my morning routine. Well, here it is. I'm going to talk about what I do every day, or certainly try to do every day. Like, I'm not a robot, but I'm pretty consistent. And one of my personal values is consistency and discipline. And I try to maintain that. So day in, day out, I try to live by this. So what is it? 7 days a week, 5 a.m. wake up. And when I say 5 a.m., there's days when I might drift into 6:30, 6 o'clock or 5:30, whatever, but I'm aiming to be up at 5 a.m. every single day. And in order to do that, though, I'm not going to cut short my sleep. So I do go to bed earlier than maybe a lot of people. I try to be in bed by 10 o'clock. I try to be asleep at the very latest by 10:30 so that I'm getting at least 6.5 hours sleep. But really, optimally, you should be getting 7. And if you can, get 8. Now, as you get older, it seems to me anyway, from my perspective, you don't need as much sleep, because I will naturally wake up after 5-6 hours. But when I was away in Tenerife and I didn't have work on me and all this, and we had very, very dark blinds in the room, I slept for 8.5 hours one day, and I can remember feeling incredible the next day and thinking to myself, yes, super important. Your sleep is part. And if anyone who is interested in, working out and going to the gym and all this kind of stuff, one of the most important things in terms of your fitness is your recovery and your rest. And having a good sleep is part of that system. You don't, doing all of this crazy amounts of lifting and exercise and all that, you don't get the benefits unless you're actually going to get the sleep as well. So it's a combination of the two. Things like going to bed with your phone and scrolling TikTok or whatever it is, that is not going to work, okay? You say you're in bed, but really you can go on for half an hour scrolling with TikTok. Also, eating. Don't eat before, I try to stop eating at 6 p.m. The idea is that when I'm going to bed, I've got no digestion going on, because digestion is actually tiring you out, because your system needs to actually be working while you're sleeping. Also, I gave up alcohol years and years ago now at this stage, but alcohol it's going to impact your sleep. So if you are, a person who likes a couple of glasses of wine, and I used to be with that person, it is going to give you a poor night's sleep, or certainly you might feel like you fell asleep very quickly, but you didn't have a quality sleep. And that's where all the research points to. Now, good sleep allows you to wake up feeling refreshed in the morning. And so what does that make possible? It makes a really solid exercise session or workout or whatever possible. I have found in the past that I can get up and I can do incredibly hard workouts. I have an app on my phone called Freeletics, and Freeletics is this body weight thing where I do burpees and stuff. And if you've been listening long enough, you know that I've done 1,000 burpees in one session and things like that. This to me is only possible when you get a good night's sleep. If I get up in the morning, I wear a thing called an Aura ring, and the Aura ring monitors your sleep patterns during the night. And so it's really, really interesting for me. I open up the phone and I can actually see the data. I can see how much REM sleep I got, how much deep sleep I got. And then it'll actually predict what's your readiness for exercise or for a workout that day. So it's really interesting. I'm into all that kind of data and stuff. Anyway, good sleep, you get up, you feel good, but it's more than just priming, okay? And so I'm going to get into some of the stuff that I do to prime my mind, okay? It's one thing doing all of the exercise and all that kind of stuff, but what you actually also want is to prime your mind. So how do I prime my body and mind in the morning time? Okay, I'll give you an idea of the protocol, we'll say. What I do every day, and I'm now 260 days into it. I haven't missed a single 10-minute meditation session in 262 days in a row, I think it is. So that's consistency for you. I use an app called Calm, and you put it on every single morning. There's a different meditation, and I put it on 10 minutes and then you're done. That's the first thing. I read a page of a book called The Daily Stoic. Now, it's a piece of Stoic wisdom or philosophy, but it's from people like Marcus Aurelius. Now, if you're not interested in this, it might glaze over at the moment, but this is the Emperor of Rome 2,000 years ago, and it was his personal diary that he kept. And every day you can read a piece of kind of wisdom from this guy who was ruling the world essentially 2,000 years ago. And it's just fascinating to kind of listen to his thoughts and stuff. So I read that on a daily basis. And it's only a small passage, takes about 1.5 minutes to read, and then I'm done. I have a thing called a 5-minute journal. And I fill out the 5-minute journal. I have a version called the health or the fit version or whatever it's called. And it's focused on your health. So what am I going to do for my health today? It asks a couple of questions like that. And I just like to fill it out, how I'm feeling, what kind of a workout I'm going to do, and that kind of thing. I also have another journal that I write more sort of deeply in. And what I like to do is I have on my phone, I have a notes app, and on that I keep what I call my values and identity. And this is a list of things, my values that I try to live by. And the idea of that is just, we all want to live a certain way. Like, we want to be successful, blah, blah, blah. But what does it mean to you to be successful? Like, how do you want to show up every day? And if you get up in the morning tired and groggy and stuff like that, it's easy to just roll into the day and let it hit you. Whereas if you go in primed and ready, and you're like saying, okay, yes, what do I stand for? I'm consistent, I'm disciplined, I'm highly organized, all that kind of stuff. If you get into that, then you start off on the right foot, and it means you'll be making decisions from the right place. And at least you're reminding yourself of who you are, or at least who you want to be. Now, there is the other thing is to remind yourself, like, your goals and what is your plan for the week. I like to try to organize my plan for the week, and I like to just remind myself, okay, here is the priority. Now, there's a few other things that I do that I've added more recently. And the reason I added these is because I watched an episode on National Geographic called Limitless, and it's with Chris Hemsworth. And for those of you who don't know, Chris Hemsworth is the actor who plays Thor in the Marvel sort of superhero sort of franchise. And he did a whole thing on longevity and how to increase your life and things like that. It's really interesting. So I've been implementing some of the things that he put in. And one of them is shocking the system with cold water. And so every day for months now, I've been having an ice cold shower in the morning. Some people will dip into the sea, and that's another way of doing it. Other people will have a cold plunge pool. That's another way of doing it. I go in, put the water to the absolute coldest, and I turn it on, and I give it a moment or two so that it's really cold, and then I jump in. And I don't jump in to get it over with in 10 seconds. I jump in and I do everything that you would normally do, you know, wash your hair, wash your body, whatever it is, all that stuff. And I take my time. Now, it is uncomfortable, but that is the purpose of doing it. You want to do things that are uncomfortable. And there's a thing called the flinch. I think I heard Matt Diavella, the YouTuber, talking about the flinch. And the flinch is where you go in and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this. And you're kind of like, will I put the water on my, on my hand first, and then I get a little bit more here. I don't do that. I just go straight in under the thing, and I try to do it without any hesitation at all. Just zero flinch. The next thing is, and I've just been reading the book Wim Hof, the Wim Hof method, when I was away in Tenerife. And I'm implementing a thing called the breathing exercises. That is an interesting thing. It's where you do this kind of deep breathing. Funnily enough, it was also in the Chris Hemsworth show, Limitless. They talked about box breathing as a way to de-stress and stuff. There's another thing called grounding. Now, this is quite new. I've only just started doing this recently. But this is where you take off your shoes and your socks, and you actually go out and stand in grass, mud, sand, whatever it is. You're touching the earth itself. And there's all sorts of technical reasons why it's supposed to be good for you. I try to approach these things with an open mind, rather than becoming kind of like, oh, why the hell will I do that? That doesn't sound like. I just say, you know what? These guys that are influential and are kind of living their best life, they suggest that it's very, very good. So I'm going to try it. The next thing, and those of you who have watched Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab, it's called, on YouTube, he talks about early morning sunshine, and in particular the importance of vitamin D. Now, one of the problems we have here in Ireland, and anyone living in the kind of northern hemisphere, so England, parts of the US and stuff like that, we have got pretty crappy weather at this time of the year. And so when was the last time you saw direct sunlight? That is a problem. So I take vitamin D orally in the morning. I spray some stuff into my mouth. That's what you're doing. But it's far, far better to get direct sunlight early in the morning on your face, on your body, if you can. And so when I was away in Tenerife, I made sure I got the absolute most of that. And I was going out and I was taking off my shirt and I don't want to get sunburned, but I want to get sun on my body. Another thing that I try to do every single day, it's not easy because it takes quite a bit to do it, but I try to get 10,000 steps. And I have my Apple Watch here that records that. And yesterday I did the big long 10K walk. So I recorded 16,000 steps. It was longer than usual. And I also try to close the rings. There's kind of like these rings for the amount of activity you did. And so I do that. Now, also, cognitively, my mind, I want to keep my mind sharp as well. So a little habit that I have every morning is I take out the Rubik's Cube. Now, that might sound silly. I remember when the Rubik's Cube first came out in the 80s, doing the Rubik's Cube, having no clue how to do it. Today, I can solve it in like 2 minutes. And so I'll get my wife to mix it up, and I'll fix it. And I'll fix it in usually about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And so it's not, who cares, a Rubik's Cube, but actually it's mind muscle memory. And so I do it for that purpose. I also have on my phone, I have Sudoku. And those of you who, you'll be familiar with the Sudoku puzzles. It looks like a bit like a crossword puzzle, but with numbers on it. And so I try to do one of those puzzles every single day. And I've become better and better and better to the point where I'm now doing expert level games. Now, they are really, really tough. It can take me up to an hour to do that. So I don't always have the time to do that. But when I was on the plane the other day, coming back from Tenerife, I did an expert level, and it took me like an hour and 15 minutes or something. But it's so rewarding when you figure out these incredibly difficult puzzles and stuff like that. And in terms of my daily habit, this is not so much my morning routine. I don't eat breakfast in the morning. What I have is I'll have a coffee and I'll have a multivitamin, and then that's it, and I'll drink water. And so I'll do my exercise in a fasted state. And the time that I finished food is usually around 6 p.m. the night before. So when I'm doing my workout, I'm usually 12, 13 hours into my fast. And I actually found, which seems counterintuitive, but I have found that being fasted actually makes you stronger and fitter and like faster in the morning. And so that is an interesting thing that I've discovered. And I've also done I try to do once a week, I try to do a 36-hour fast. Now, if you've never done fasting, that's going to sound crazy, but it's actually not that difficult once you become familiar with it. I do every day 18 hours. I stop eating at 6 and I don't eat again until midday the next day. And that is 18 hours. Now, when you do break your fast and you start eating, make sure you're eating good, healthy food, because, it's no point in doing the big fast and then stuffing your mouth with pizza or something like that. After all of this, this regime that I've implemented over the last couple of years, I have to say, every morning I feel like a machine. I feel so full of energy. I've got a great day ahead of me, basically, and the productivity is off the charts when I manage to fit in all of this stuff. And so it's especially when I get in a fasted state. What I've really found is that when I'm doing 36-hour fast, I feel like, you feel like you just have everything on the tip of your tongue. It's like you're super wired when you're in a 36-hour fast, and your brain becomes so fast because it's not processing any of your digestion system and all that. All your energy is in your brain, and so it's super interesting. It might sound particularly extreme if you're not used to doing this, but it's something that you can ease yourself into and just try it out and see. Maybe you'll find that it's improved. But I never suffer from the afternoon kind of lull where you're feeling kind of groggy and stuff after lunch. Usually I feel really, really sharp. Now, finally, planning your day. Obviously, you're going to get started on your day. Like all of that I've done, all the priming, that's before I lift a pen to do any work. And so what am I actually going to do when I start work? Well, it's important to have one priority for the day. And usually, like if you have a bigger project that has to be done, say that week or that month or whatever, then the one priority that day might be a component or a task that will help you achieve the bigger project. But have one priority. And I know I'm guilty of this as well, but I often have to-do lists, big, long to-do lists with all this stuff. And the reality is, if you have a big, long to-do list, you have no priority. And so what's really important is that you identify what is the one thing that if I achieved this makes everything else, easier or unnecessary. And that is a line from Atomic Habits by James Clear. Now, the other thing that I try to do, and this is, it may not be the priority, but if you go down through your list of things that you need to do, you might find what I call the frog, okay? That is the unpleasant, task that you've been putting off, that you're procrastinating on. Why? Because it's unpleasant, or because it's going to require a load of thinking, and it seems like a lot of work. That's when you say, okay, swallow the frog. That's the first task of the day, because if you can get that unpleasant, unnecessary, not unnecessary, but it's an important task, but it's something that you're kind of avoiding. Get that onto your list and do that first, because as soon as that's done, the sense of relief is fantastic. What else? Do you have any major goal or purpose? And that is something when I try to have goals for the year or something, and then maybe an overarching, we'll say a purpose. And if you have an overarching purpose, something that you feel deeply about, that you care about, and that gives you energy just thinking about it, that should be what your priority of the day is getting you closer to. Do not start your day by opening your email. What you're doing there is you're opening your email and you're getting the agenda of everybody else, not your agenda. Your agenda, if you're planning on achieving some great thing at the end of the year or whatever, then your agenda should be something, maybe it's a small task or whatever, but that one thing that is a step in the direction of the bigger goal or the purpose. Anyway, guys, I could go on for hours about this. This is stuff that really, I'm kind of taking you behind the curtain and stuff that really kind of drives me. Let me know what you thought about this topic. Is it something that resonates, or is it something that is of interest, or should I just go back to real estate talk and stop kind of going off the topic? I'm interested to know, because I've got other systems and things like that I could talk about if you're interested. Stuff about like finding your purpose, how to plan your year, all that. Let me know if that would be of interest. If not, if you prefer me to stick to the property investment stuff, let me know as well. I need your feedback to know what kind of episodes to put out. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Facade. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, please connect with me via the Facebook group that is called Behind the Facade Community. Alternatively, you will find me on social media. My handle is Gavin J. Gallagher. You can stay up to date with all of my content and the various projects I'm working on over on my website, gavinjgallagher.com. And while you're there, please do add your name to the Join My Tribe thing over on the right-hand side. This will ensure you're kept up to date via my weekly newsletter. All of these links are in the show notes below. That's all for now. I will see you guys in the next episode.